You know, we start off with stick baits, but we very quickly move into spoons, and it's generally when those fish, you know, they could be in that 20-25 foot water as well, using spoons mixed in with the stick baits, but really when they start to bounce out into that 45, 60 on top of the Niagara Bar, for an example, or just outside of where we were catching them a few weeks earlier, spoons really seem to come into play.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, that's when you kind of set the stick baits aside and switch over to spoons. And, you know, it's nice and easy. You just have one hook on it. Most of the fish you hook are getting to the boat. And, yeah, it's just you put out a spread of them, and that's... Yeah,
here's a few baits that, you know, we can talk about for spoons. A lot of times, you know, we do dictate, you know, water clarity as well as conditions that we're faced with. So, you know, early in the morning, for an example, we tend to lean a lot towards, you know, your glow in the darks. This is a glow Wonder Bread, for an example. Or we might get into, you know, some of the baits like this RV style, or even the Carbon 14 with a glow back. Very good in the early morning stages. Excellent. But as the sun comes up, you can start to get a little more sheen on your baits, like using the road toad, for an example. It's got a silver back.
Yeah, even these.
Yeah, we got
any of the shinier baits.
Shinier baits. We got the alewife, and they have, this one's a gold alewife, nice one.
Yeah, and that's Fat Nancy's, which is probably one of the best spring spoons out there.
Love them.
Can't go wrong. So.
There, you know, so a lot of the spoons, you know, you can start to up your speed a little bit too and cover some water. Meanwhile, sometimes in our stick bait program early, you know, our speeds are a little bit further down, like let's say 2 to 2.4 miles per hour. But now you can really kind of pump this up. You can do that 2.4 to 2.7. And really get these humming too as well.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing when you're fishing that 20 to 25 foot range and you do have a spread of stick baits out, it's hard to put spoons in with it just because of your speed. You're not getting the same action out of your baits as you would if you were running just straight spoons. So.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff, sorry, yep. Question back there?
This earlier on, what size spoons are you using at this point?
Yeah, it's very good question. It can be reg size or mag size. So these are mag size spoons. Really, the stingers, they're kind of like a reg size as well. They're a mag size spoon. And really what you're trying to do is imitate the alewife. Now the alewives are starting to come in. Another point that I should have made is that this time now the alewives are starting to roll into the shoreline to come in for spawn. So it's usually that first week of May, maybe last week of April, and now the water temperatures have rose to almost 50 degrees, 52 degrees. So, you know, you're starting to see these alewife, and you're really trying to imitate them. Meanwhile, before that, you're talking about smelts, and you're talking about maybe some local emerald shiners. So smaller baits, thinner baits, which is very similar to your stick baits in profile.
Yeah, like this time of year or early April, I would just start off with a smaller spoon, just like a regular size, not like just the standard size. But then you'll notice end of April, when you start getting those kings off the bar, and you'll start seeing some alewife, like kings are spitting them up. Like last year, there was huge alewife, and you could barely get a spoon that was big enough to match them. So, and then that's when we were running like big urns. You know, we're running big urns in May, right? So, and you can't really find a bigger trolling spoon than that, right? So
super mag. We're going to talk a little bit about those.
Yeah, especially for stagers, but
but they do have a time and place, because really in the spring you're talking about the adult alewives, right? The biggest of the population are coming into spawn. So we're trying to imitate some of those bigger alewives, bigger meals, right? Excellent. Yeah, one of the ways that we deploy, so spoons could be deployed in different ways, but certainly at this time of the year, you know, early part of May, we still are using our planer boards. and we're using, you know, riggers as well, maybe some shallow divers. Slide divers really come into play. For me, this time of year with the spoons, slide divers are very, very good. But out on the boards, a lot of cores, lead core lines. So lead core line itself sinks. So here's a spool of lead core. Here we actually have it in bulk as well if you want to just spool up have the store spool it up for you. But really this line will sink and pull that bait down to the depth that you want depending on how much lead core you're using. So for kings in the spring, it could be as little as 2 colored lead cores or all the way down to 5 or 7 core lead cores. So it's all about how much depth you want to achieve. And they really work at that time.
Yeah, that's like the number one time to be fishing lead cores.
Oh, yeah.
You know, shallow lead cores anyway. Yeah.
Would you use the lead core like on the outside planers?
It all depends. If, like, let's say you have a 4-rod spread and if you want to be running 4 planer boards, you want to just set it up. So if you wanted to run 4 lead cores, you would have typically how I fish, I would have my longest lead cores out and then I would just work my way in, you know, because then you're going to have fish crossing those inside lines. If you're inside planer boards, let's say you had a 5 color on your inside and then you only had a 2 color on your outside, if you hook a fish, then it's going to cross that line.
So if you're fishing with the floral and then lead core, you can fish the lead core outside on the planers and the floral on the inside.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're fishing, it's about 30 feet per color on most lead cores. So if you're fishing, like let's say a 3 color, that'd be about 90 feet plus your leader. So you'd have about 90 feet of line out on a 3 color. So as long as your inside board is less than 90 feet or 100 feet, then you should be all right. Yeah.
Yeah, and on the lead cores too, you know, the fluorocarbon leaders that we're using, I've still scaled down. So we talked about scaling down for stick baits, but I still use that same kind of mentality for my lead cores. It's about stealth and it's about getting as much action out of my spoons as possible. Remember, those short cores, you know, less than 7 colors, even later in the season, I'm not going to be using them for flasher flies or flasher cut bait, but they're likely going to be spoon rods for me going forward. So I typically end up using leaders that are 20 or 25 pound. And, you know, like I really like using the FC Sniper. It really holds up. It's quality line, but there's also, you know, like the Pro Chrome Berkeley. This one's 25 pounds, so if you need to up it a little bit, if you're derby fishing, for an example, you can go with that, and that can last you all season long as well. I usually use about 35 feet. That's kind of my number for my leader length.
Yeah, I'm around the same. I'm between 15 to 30 feet, and that seems to work good.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. This time now we're talking about, you know, we're starting to get this transition. Really now in this area, we tend to have the Niagara River flowing warmer now. And this is typically around that May long weekend or the week before, around Mother's Day. The river is flowing warmer than Lake Ontario's main body of water. And it really draws in a lot of fish. So, you know, there's a lot of fish to be had usually on the Niagara Bar.
For sure.
And techniques can change dramatically from anything from what we've already talked about up on the Niagara Bar itself on the top, all the way out off the ledge and fishing deep, as much as 220 feet down and catching salmon. So it could vary, you know, dramatically with our techniques and how we're catching.
Yeah, for sure. Like the Niagara Bar, do a lot of you guys fish the Niagara Bar, or just by a show of hands? Yeah. So around, I would say, mid to late April, that's when we'll start seeing those fish pushing up there. And the good thing about there is you could fish the shallow water up, like right on top, right near the river mouth. And then if fish aren't around there, you could just go right out to the drop. And it's like fishing two totally different areas of water that are pretty close to each other.
Yeah.
So that's where you can go from fishing 25 feet of water to fishing the drop from 50 down to 220, within a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
So just by flying out there.
And that could be very much the case where you're fishing first thing in the morning on top of the Niagara Bar in 60 feet or less. And then as the sun's come up, maybe 8 o'clock in the morning, now you're dashing out into, off the drop from where it drops from 60 down to 120, 130, 140, and you'll see it just plummet. But the kings will drop off the bar as well, and you can follow those fish as the day progresses out away. Now, one thing just a little tidbit of information on that as well. A lot of guys are using the drop itself and running it like a highway. Just you see the boats going like this right on the contours, and that's generally okay first thing in the morning when the fish are really on the active bite, but they shut them off very, very quickly. So by 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock and you still see that highway happening, I tend not to fish the highway anymore and start fishing in my own water, usually away from them, usually outside. If it's deeper, as the day goes on, I'll be quite a ways out, a little deeper than where the majority of the boats are going back and forth. So that's that 240, 220 to 240, all the way out to 300. You're starting to get way off the bar and looking for those fish that are your own.
Yeah, and that's the same thing goes for at the river mouth, right up on the bar. You'll get there first thing in the morning at first light, and it'll be a parking lot of boats. That bite, just like you said, will last, an hour and a half, 2 hours, and it'll just shut off like a light switch. And in those 2 hours, you can do, 10 to 20 fish and do really good. But that bite will shut down. You'll notice a lot of those boats will leave, and a lot of the boats will start heading out to the drop. But if you do hang around there, I always have my best days when we're in there at like 10 or 11 in the morning and there's no boats around. And especially sunny days where that water's warming up as the day's going on, you'll be the only boat. You'll be circling in there and rods will just start firing again. So you don't want to stay near the pack of boats. Yeah. That's the key to spring fishing, is get away from everybody. And your success rates will go way up. Absolutely. For sure.
Yeah. One other point on the Niagara Bar as well, because of the influence of the Niagara River and the current that's coming out, you can only imagine that you're battling, different speeds, right? Indicating what those speeds are. We talked about, using speed and temp probes to help us with that, whether it be a fish hawk or the new Seeker from Scotty Downriggers. These are, the tools that we're using so that we can mimic what speed we want the baits to be running at depth. And in that Niagara Bar, or close to the mouth of the river itself, in the trough we sometimes call it, the current it's crazy how fast it is. Going up to the Green Can, for an example, the boat GPS will be barely moving, like 0.01 kind of speed, and your down speed's perfect.
Yeah, you're almost hot-shotting the baits.
Hot-shotting the baits, in the current. So, and that's fun. The only thing about it is be very cognizant of the other boats, because you'll know when you're amongst others that know what they're doing, but if there's somebody that doesn't, they'll go across your lines. Yeah. So just keep space. Note that where guys are going up into the current, and then they make their turn, follow suit. Don't do it earlier, don't do it later, because you'll mess up the whole crowd.
Yeah, you kind of want to get in line with everybody and do the same thing. So everybody's turn, you're all fishing the same, it's like a circle almost, right? You're going up into it and then coming down it. Yeah. And especially with the speed there, it's super tricky because you have such a strong current. So, trying to just kind of dial in your speeds. If you're doing, let's say, you're going to be doing 2.5 miles an hour up, just for example, and then going down, your GPS speed might be 4 miles an hour, right? So it's a super strong current. But what you want to keep in mind is just always replicate your speed, doesn't matter what it is. If you're getting bit doing that, that's what you want to keep doing. So
Yeah. Yeah.